everyone, and welcome to Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm Jaime Agostino, your host. This is our final week discussion on advocacy. We're talking about the secret weapon of effective advocacy, the art of storytelling, how personal experiences put human faces on our credit union issues. And joining me today is Sydney with the League of Credit Union and Affiliates. Sydney, welcome. And could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me today, Jaime. This is amazing. My name is Sydney Seral. I am the Chief Advocacy Officer here at the League of Credit Unions and Affiliates. I've been with the League for a little over 5 years now and have just loved getting to represent credit unions across the Southeast and beyond. I've started 5 years ago as the Georgia lobbyist, and I have just grown in my responsibilities and leadership within our advocacy realm. And it's been a tremendous experience. So right now, I serve as the Chief Georgia lobbyist, and I also have the privilege to represent our entire advocacy team. So our state lobbyists, our federal lobbyists, our grassroots team, our regulatory advocacy team, as well as our compliance leaders, because if you're going to pass a bill, we want to make sure credit unions have the resources to implement it and be successful in that at 360-degree advocacy. So that's what I do right now. I live in Atlanta. I have a new baby girl at home, and my husband and I and our 15-pound cockapoo just love being in Atlanta and getting to represent credit unions in this role. It's been an honor and a privilege to work here.
Oh, wonderful. Well, congratulations on the baby girl. So for those not familiar with the League of Credit Unions and Affiliates, I mean, you just said you have a very robust team and some groups there helping. Could you explain, what the League does in relationship specifically to advocacy?
Absolutely. So we have a boots on the ground lobbyist in every single state, which is critically important. As we know, having a voice under the state capitol is what we do. It's our bread and butter. So we've got lobbyists in each state capital. We also have a member of the team leading our federal advocacy. So she's back and forth between the footprint and DC. We also have a team of regulatory advocacy specialists. As we've seen increasing regulatory activity at the federal and state levels, both threats and opportunities, we made the investment to make sure that we're positioning ourselves well to both advocate for credit union interests, but also make sure we're protecting against some proposals that we've seen in recent years. So we've got that on the proactive side. And additionally, we've got our PAC and grassroots team. So at the League, we call our PAC and grassroots area advocacy engagement. Okay. That's what it is. We want to see credit unions get engaged, and whether that's joining in political advocacy through political opportunities and investments, and or when there are issues going on at the Capitol and in DC, when we need their voices to be heard, that advocacy engagement function engages our credit unions and moves them to action. So we really, really believe in advocacy being a 360-degree approach and making sure that we have the resources to execute that strategy.
All right. So how does the League then engage with the lawmakers as well as the regulators at both the state and federal levels?
Sure. That's what we do every day. And whether it's texting some of our state legislator relationships, whether it's our manager of federal advocacy is actually in DC right now, following up on some of our conversations at Hike the Hill. We host a fall Hike the Hill in conjunction with America's Credit Unions Congressional Caucus. So we always ensure we're bringing credit unions up to DC at least twice a year to advocate on the Hill. We love a fall follow-up meeting in DC because it gives us the opportunity to make sure our interests going into the holiday season are remembered and prioritized. But then we're also gearing up in the fall for our state legislative sessions. So this year, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Virginia all start pretty much at the beginning of January. So we're getting ready for that. And part of our legislative sessions every year include an advocacy summit. So that's our signature state advocacy event where credit unions get to participate in that 360-degree advocacy. On day one, they're coming to learn, network with the compliance side. Day two, they're learning about our issues so that when they head to the legislative receptions at each state capitol that evening, credit unions are ready to roll with the talking points and they're abreast of the issues. And then that day three of the summit, we do our state hikes. So that's when we're going office to office, or we're in the rotundas, greeting state lawmakers, educating them about the credit union difference. It just depends. And that's just our signature events. During session, our lobbyists are there every day. There's dinners, there's meetings, and we're always want to be seen. That's the most important thing, and making sure that when lawmakers have a question, they know exactly where our team stands in the state capitals, literally, physically, and metaphorically, and have direct access to them to get their questions answered.
Okay. So then how do you keep the credit unions in those regions informed of, upcoming policy changes or upcoming regulation?
Sure. A few different things. Sometimes as state legislative sessions move as fast as they do, it's a quick text. Hey, how do we feel about this bill? Or it's a weekly update via email to our CEOs. Hey, here's what we saw at the state capitol this week. Here are a few highlights of things that are moving. And then in between that, the league has advocacy committees made up of CEOs and C-suite executives who serve as the guiding committee for the advocacy strategy in each state, as well as at the federal level. And so that's a unique tool where we're sharing bills that we're seeing and asking for guidance, making sure we're on the right page. But there's no shortage of communication, as we know, whether it's email. The league also has what we launched earlier this year, the communities platform. So creating that virtual networking environment that also allows us to information share where we're not bogging down people's inboxes. Mm-hmm. That's important. And we also do a mid-session update during the legislative sessions. We do a Zoom and we just say, hey, we're at the middle of the session. Here's what is moving. Here's what we do and anticipate to move. And make sure that we're bringing credit unions along that journey so that when we do perhaps need a little nudge via text to one of their lawmakers, they're ready to roll. They know where things are in the process. They're aware of the details and they're ready to take action.
All right. So you cover a lot of states. So what are the biggest issues currently affecting credit unions in Virginia, Alabama, Georgia, as well as Florida?
Sure. So one of my favorite things about working at a multi-state league is getting to observe, engage, and develop a strategy around issues that percolate around our states. Sometimes state lawmakers share ideas, just like we do on the lobbying side of policies that we want to advance. And what we've seen in our states lately has been a threat to regulate interchange fee income. We've seen this at the federal level, of course, with the Credit Card Competition Act, and we continue our advocacy to hold that proposal, but also seeing that trickle down into the states when federal bills aren't moving gives us an opportunity to create a strategy that's lockstep to then prepare across our region. We've seen an effort by the retailers to restrict income, to restrict that interchange income. And that's looked a little bit different in each state, but at the end of the day, the same threat it exists to our members. Credit unions depend on that interchange income to mitigate fraud, to take care of their members, to invest in fraud prevention, to reissue that debit and credit card. That's important. It's critically important income. And I don't care what the legislative proposal looks like in any of our states, we're going to defeat it and use every resource we have to do that to protect our members' income. So that's an issue we've seen move across our states recently. We've also seen an effort to restrict risk-based decision-making at the state level. We've heard a lot of conversation around debanking and that kind of trend at the federal level. Same thing, it's trickling down into the states. And we just want to, advocate for our credit unions to continue making risk-based objective decisions for their membership. And that's what we do every day. So making sure that we're not in a position to restrict that ability is also important. The other thing is what's going on at the macro level in terms of regulatory uncertainty with the CFPB, the CDFI fund, the NCUA. It's hard to create a strategic plan when things seem to be changing so frequently. And that's something that seems to change every day. You see something new in the trade press, or you're getting a whisper from a legislator friend on the Hill. So we're on top of it. The CDFI fund, especially, we were tremendously relieved to see the staffing get reinstated. The administration announced that yesterday, so we're excited to see that. But uncertainty can be very challenging while also navigating various legislative threats.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have to ask, as far as wins, this year, are there any recent advocacy wins that you're especially proud of?
Where do I start? This is a tremendous question. We work very hard. We work very, very hard because our entire advocacy apparatus just believes so passionately in the credit union movement. And wins look different in every state. Sometimes it's the bills that don't pass that really are the wins. But a couple things I'm really proud of the team for achieving this year. In Georgia, every year we work in partnership with the Department of Banking and Finance to look at ways to improve the state credit union charter for Georgia. Are there operational burdens? Are there some red tape opportunities to cut through that red tape and make things a little bit easier in an increasingly intense regulatory environment? So every year we pass a charter update bill in partnership with the Department of Banking and Finance in Georgia. We're also working hard and accomplished that with the Florida Office of Financial Regulation. We passed that bill this year. In Alabama, our Alabama lobbyist, our Vice President of Advocacy, Michelle Roth, did a great job of preventing an interchange bill from even being introduced, which was unheard of. But that's one of those wins that we've got to tell the story. And that story was successful because we had credit unions who got engaged. And then in Virginia, we also kept an interchange bill from being introduced, and that was exciting. So those are a few of the top issues where we really bucket our advocacy work in preserving, promoting, and protecting. It's not a defensive posture. It's really, what are we protecting for our membership and for our credit unions to be able to continue operating and serving members. So very proud of that. We also defeated a few anti-risk-based decision-making proposals in both Alabama and Georgia, and just continue to advocate for credit unions, the state level and federal level, as of course we know we have an increasingly challenging threat on credit union taxation this year. And at the federal level, we had our federal lobbyist up in DC almost every week. And we also had credit unions flying up outside of the GAC and outside of the Hike the Hill, but having credit unions fly up and advocate for the importance of our tax exemption. And that did not pass, of course, which we're so relieved, but never going to take our foot off the pedal on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you're doing all of this advocacy, what challenge do credit unions face when it comes to educating, our lawmakers about, credit unions' unique structure, our mission, and our purpose?
I think it's an opportunity. It's the opportunity to really talk about the credit union difference. And when the state legislative sessions are happening and bills are flying left and right, and you're navigating all these different items, that moment to pause and say, well, wait, did you know this is why we're different? You only get a few seconds. You might have a minute when you're walking with them to another meeting. So when you have a short amount of time, it's usually, here's why we don't like this bill, here's why we like this bill, and here's how it would benefit us. During the session, it's hard to have those educational moments of really getting down to the nitty gritty. That's why we focus so much out of session on hosting roundtables, whether it's having lawmakers come to chapter events or or setting up credit union meet and greets, whatever that looks like. During session, their time is just so few and far between. So I think it's really just it's a bandwidth issue of the lawmaker and also a reality of the game, if you will. It's so important, but also, we're exploring other opportunities for how we can provide that education. We're really excited this year. We've been working on an impact report for each state that we can hand to each lawmaker and the executive branch and other constitutional officers so they can see this incredible impact of credit unions in their states and in DC, but also we'll have it virtually, of course. So they can scan a QR code and learn about credit unions, perhaps when they're on the floor waiting for votes to be done or what have you. But it's about getting creative and getting our message out there in front of members when you don't always have that time, when you're in a meeting or when you're in the halls trying to catch somebody.
All right. So then how does, regulators and legislative changes, like you had already mentioned, CFPB rules, taxation, cybersecurity laws, I mean, they impact credit unions and their members. So how do you navigate some of that?
We have a tremendous regulatory advocacy team who, it's funny, we've got a great team member who every week he highlights this regulatory advocacy roundup. And it started as just highlights from the trade press that week and just sending it to the advocacy team. And it has grown. He's got a fan base. So he keeps us apprised of the top line issues. We also work very closely with John McKechnie, who's a longtime credit union advocate and phenomenal lobbyist for us as well in DC. So he keeps us apprised, but really it's how are we making ourselves smarter and staying on top of the issue so that we can then relate to credit unions. What's the most important? What's actually moving? What's just a headline? What's a catchy update? It changes, honestly, seems to be changing every day these days. And over communicating on something like that to us is where we're trying to stay, but also highlighting the top line issues. Right now, our biggest challenge is the uncertainty. And I know, we talked about that, but especially with the CDFI fund. I mean, we've been on quite the journey with that fund. And, you've got funds that are sitting there that credit unions have been awarded and approved and are waiting to deploy them so they can put their strategy into place. And then you have credit unions who want to apply for and go through the rigorous process, but aren't sure where will the funds stand. And then you have the government shutdown, the longest government shutdown in history, and a reduction in force of staff of the entire fund. So then we're sitting here, oh my gosh, what's going on? And you can imagine that level of uncertainty makes it very challenging to develop a multi-year strategic plan within a credit union. Yeah. And that impedes progress at a time when we really, really need it. Then you have things like, when we're on the Hill, whether at the state capitals or in DC, talking about the importance of interchange income and why and the role that credit unions play as card issuers in that payments infrastructure and why it's so important, and also navigating various levels of those proposals. But, the restriction of interchange income could mean services going away. And that is a literal direct impact. And that's a story that seems to resonate with legislators because it's so true. Any reduction of that income, given our not-for-profit status, that means something's, that puts us credit unions in a position of having to look at other services and products. And that impacts consumers, it impacts voters, it impacts constituents. And, it's just it's a trickle down effect. And then you have things like the big, beautiful bill and the auto loan reporting provision. And that'll have a big compliance impact on credit unions, but we're awaiting the guidance on that. So how can the league fill in to help walk credit unions through what that compliance will look like? It's never ending. But it's tremendous job security. So there's an absolute, there's just we're protecting, we're preserving, we're promoting. And it just it has a direct impact on what credit unions can offer their members. And at the end of the day, that is the only thing that matters. How will this impact our ability to continue being the good community stewards that we are? Mm-hmm. And whatever that is, any relative impact doesn't matter. We're going to be on top of the issue and protecting that.
All right. So what bills or proposals are you watching right now?
So right now, we are gearing up in the states for our state legislative sessions to begin in January. In DC, the CDFI fund, every Hill office we talk to, we're just saying, hey, we're still very concerned about this. This is very important. We know this is more of a regulatory and agency lobbying moment for us, but also making sure that our congressional offices are aware of what's important to us. A few things we're really still trying to push, and they're just so important and such common sense proposals. The Credit Union Board Modernization Act. This is something that's passed the House several times and awaits Senate action. And it's really just giving credit unions the ability, if they want it, to have more board flexibility. Our financial services colleagues have more flexibility, and we're always going to advocate for the same thing, but also freeing up the ability, if credit unions want it, for additional board meeting flexibility is a win-win. That time could be, reallocated elsewhere, just a tool in the toolbox, but also an opportunity to advocate for the veterans MBL and removing veterans loans from the MBL cap, which is a whole nother story and something that's way overdue. But let's talk about getting business loans to those who have served our country and could use the help, and removing those loans from counting towards the cap for credit union business lending is just a small way to serve those who have served our nation. That's an issue we've been advocating for years. And we still don't know why. This isn't done, because all it would do is increase options for veterans trying to start their own business. Another item that we're working very closely on with Congressman Loudermilk's office is the CTR threshold. This is something that hasn't been updated in years, and looking to increase that threshold to an amount that would provide overnight flexibility for the compliance departments at credit unions who are filing CTR reports. And indexing that number for inflation would be great, but we're willing to compromise and just work with our banks on this too. This is something that we just see as some opportunity for relief to free up credit unions and free up law enforcement to perhaps redirect attention to some other fraudulent activities, which we know is incredibly rampant in the financial institutions arena right now. So just a few things, just a handful of things, and more every day. But those are a few of the really important bills that we're tracking. And every time we're in DC, we're advocating for this because it's the right thing to do, and it's the right way to help credit unions serve their members.
All right. Well, let's talk about the credit unions a little bit. What role do local credit unions play in this advocacy process, and how do you get them involved?
Oh my gosh, who would we be without our credit union advocates? We tell our members all the time, when we're out visiting with lawmakers, yeah, it's great, and we've got that relationship. That's our job as the lobbyists. But when a bill is moving, they don't want to hear from us anymore. They want to hear how it's going to impact their communities as representatives. Of course, that's what they want to know. So without credit unions coming along that advocacy journey, we would not be very effective. I will tell you that. And I will tell you, some of the most impactful moments in our advocacy strategy are when our credit unions take time away from their credit unions, running their shops or running their departments in the shop, and they come join us at the Capitol, whether they're coming to testify on the structure of interchange and chargebacks and intricate payment details, or if they're coming to testify about why We love municipalities to have other financial options in their communities. You know, coming to be that advocate and wear the lobbying hat, sitting down with their members in DC or at the state capitals is just tremendously impactful. And let's be real, a lot of it these days is also texting. Hi, Senator so and so. I saw this bill. I see it's moving. We're very opposed to this. Quick blurb, send the text. Oh, Sydney, we heard from such and such credit union, and I hear you. Thank you for encouraging them to reach out to me. Don't worry about it. Love that. So that is the best way to advocate. So, for us, it's creating those opportunities for credit unions to be engaged, but also it starts in the off season. How are we creating those opportunities for them to be engaged? Is it sitting down for coffee? Is it hosting a breakfast roundtable where we're talking about issues that are important to us? Or are there relationships that our credit unions already have in the league, working with them to make sure we've got an understanding of that network? Credit unions are in the communities every single day. They're serving, they're running into people at the grocery store. It's just the community web that credit unions weave is just so organic and natural and authentic that you're naturally going to have those relationships. And then us creating that next action for how to engage in the advocacy is just the perfect situation.
All right. So looking ahead to 2026, what do you see as the top advocacy priority?
Oh man, my team would love for me to just have one. But I would say, it is bar none, it's a protective posture. It is, we're in an environment right now where when things aren't moving in DC, they trickle down to the states. And whether that's restrictions on interchange income or any kind of proposal that would move us backwards from a fraud mitigation standpoint, removing our ability to make risk-based decisions, those would probably be our top priorities. But one of the items I'm most excited about next year in all 4 states is we're running charter modernizations. And those are done in partnership with the state regulators. Each state looks a little bit different. The process looks a little bit different, but having that relationship with the state regulator to advance, whatever it is, maybe it's, modernizing the approach to loan reporting, or it's terminology cleanup just to make it more modern, or lumping in fraud mitigation language, whatever that looks like in any state, that is a huge win, because that's a direct reinvestment into the credit union to then cut some red tape, which is good. Cutting the red tape just means more attention to members always. And that's the most important thing.
All right. Sydney, thank you for joining me. Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Jaime, just thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about something for which I am just so passionate. And here at the League, advocacy is job one. It is 360-degree advocacy. We like dynamic advocacy. That means we're bringing credit unions along the journey and trying to get better every single day. We're preserving, we're protecting, we're promoting, but we're advancing. And that's what's most important, is doing what we can to advance the credit union movement and allow credit unions to continue being people, helping people, and serving their communities. That's the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here today and share some insights regarding advocacy and what's happening in some of the states that you're serving. So appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Sure. And I also need to thank Vizzo Financial's education offerings for sponsoring today's episode. Vizzo Financial is committed to providing educational opportunities that help credit unions stay informed of current issues and trends affecting the financial industry. The educational offerings include access to free webinars, also some workshops, conferences, blog articles, This podcast, as well as so much more, details on all of Vizzo Financial's educational opportunities are available on their website at www.vfccu.org. This is our final 2025 episode of Financial Minds Meet the Experts. We will see you again in 2026. I would like to take this moment to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Holidays. I hope everyone has a wonderful new year full of happiness, health, and success. Seasons change, years come and go, but our credit union family grows stronger. Hugs, kisses, love, and happy new year wishes to you, your family, and your credit union. Thanks for listening and make it a great day.